Okay, sound is on. On now, but
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the July 2024 Legacies and Marche hybrid program of the Dallas Butler Center for Arkansas Studies. I'm Heather Registers of Indian, the Programs and Website Coordinator for the Roberts Library at the Central Arkansas Library System. Yeah, your jackhammer hasn't started yet. Okay, so until the main library reopens, which you might have noticed, we're doing a little construction project. We are here at UA Little Rock downtown. Thank you, Emily and Martha, for welcoming us, hosting us here in this great space. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for remembering things that I forget, like things. So if you would like to, well, that got really bad. So if you would like to sign up for our email list, you can use the sheet that's at the cookie table. You can also use the QR code there and go directly, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, next month I'm going to have an iPad. So, and I may just make you do it just because it's a new toy, right? So please consider donating to the Callis Foundation to support the activities of the Callis Butler Center for Arkansas Studies or the Encyclopedia of Arkansas. You can go to robertslibrary.org and click the donate button there, or you can go to encyclopediaofarkansas.net, same donate button, just different websites. And please donate to us either one time or a monthly recurring. We love those. We really would appreciate your support, and we would use your money very wisely. So today's talk is being live streamed. That's the thing we do now. And it'll be available on the Callis YouTube channel after the program is over. You can just go watch it over and over again, because I know it's going to be a great program. So today's speaker will answer questions at the end of the session. For folks on Zoom, you can just type your questions in the chat and I will read them out aloud. And then obviously for folks in the room, raise your hand, we'll call on you. And if folks in the room will please silence your cell phones, that would be great. So today's program, we are joined, or for today's program, we are joined by Danielle Afsordeh. She is a community outreach archivist for the Central Arkansas Library System, and she is going to talk about the really incredible work she's doing with the community of Marche, which is in northern Pulaski County. And I'll add Arkansas to that for anybody outside or for the YouTube, because there's a lot of Pulaski counties in the United States. So Danielle has a master's in public history from UA Little Rock, and she has spearheaded a lot of our community history projects here at the Central Arkansas Library System. The 2019 Arkansas River Flood Initiative, the March 31st, 2023 tornado collecting initiative, and then she also had the original vision for our do-it-yourself memory lab. So everybody please give a warm welcome to Danielle.
I put my gallon of water back. So I think Heather sort of talked a little bit about my position, but I want to elaborate on it a bit so that you have the context for why this is happening. So I am the community outreach archivist here. If you're not familiar with what that might entail, I do both outreach with our existing archival collections, and I also try to start new collecting initiatives to fill archival silences, so the places and people that are not represented in the archival record. And that's sort of how I got interested in Marche. When I was first hired, it was actually brought to my attention by my manager, Brian, who was hiding in the back as per usual. Marche is a historically Polish community, and we had one archival collection that was less than a linear foot representing their over 130-year history in the state, and that seemed insufficient. So I reached out to the Catholic parish that has been there the entire time and asked if they would connect me with maybe some community elders that could try and help me fill in some of those holes. I see the settlement of Marche as one of the most successful efforts to resettle immigrants in Arkansas's history. It has a long-standing parish presence that continues to serve immigrant communities in Arkansas, and they have a continued celebration of their culture with the Carnival Festival that they do every year. It's a carnival that they use to raise money for the parish school, and they celebrate their Polish culture during that festival, and it's been happening every year since the early 1990s. It was picked back up after it started in the 1950s and took a hiatus. So I was able to connect to the community through that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of sort of presenting some of the historical findings, but I just kind of wanted to give you that context. The Marche community is in Pulaski County. It's 12 miles north of Little Rock. In the late 19th century, the area was settled by Polish immigrants wishing to escape the struggles of life in the north. Anti-Catholic and Eastern European sentiments were high, especially in the Chicago area, where many of these folks relocated from. They were seeking a life like what they had left in Poland. The land now known as Marche was first the native territory of the Quapaw and the migratory hunting land of the Osage prior to the colonial period. In 1818, the area became part of Pulaski County, and in 1872, Judge Liberty Bartlett attempted to establish a town in this area now known as Marche, dubbing it Bartlett Springs. The town never took hold, and the Little Rock and Fort Smith Railroad gained control of the area and renamed it Warren Station, for which the county township was named. The railroad company attempted to turn Warren Station into a recreation center for the people of Little Rock. But by 1877, however, this project had failed and the railroad was put up for sale. The map you see here is one of those things that you find as an archivist that just like sends a chill down your spine. So I recently found this map about 6 weeks ago. The Arkansas State Archives actually posted it on their Facebook. And for the first time, I see the land that was actually for sale. I've never seen like a map visualization of this land. So this map was likely seen by the folks who ended up settling in Marche. These 11,000 acres, which ran west along the railroad from about 10 miles northwest of Little Rock toward the Pulaski-Faulkner County line, was then bought by a Polish count to provide farms for Polish immigrants. Community lore and prior scholarship suggest that the name Marche, which is French for marketplace, was coined by these Polish settlers. But if you look at a zoomed view of this 1874 map, indicates this land was for sale by the railroad and reveals that the area was known as Marche prior to the Polish settlement. This is the earliest known reference to Marche in archival documentation. So we still don't know why it was called Marche. I imagine that this area was originally settled by the French and probably it just got picked up as a way to make it more marketable for someone, but so they just went with it once they arrived, I suppose, but we still don't really know, but we know the Polish didn't do it. So, which makes sense, because why would they name it after a French name? So, Marche's first settlement came by way of Count Timothy von Chwinski. He was a nobleman and political refugee from Poland. He became concerned with the suffering of many of his fellow Polish immigrants who were residing in the slums of large cities, such as New York and Chicago. He wished to improve the working and living conditions of these immigrants and began the search for a farming environment that was more familiar. While reading a Polish language newspaper, he was introduced to suitable farmland in central Arkansas. After meeting with the land agent for the Little Rock and Fort Smith Railway in March of 1877, he purchased 22,000 acres 10 miles northwest of Little Rock. In May of 1877, 22 fellow Poles visited the site with von Chwinski and agreed to settle on half the purchase. Several different groups of Poles began to settle in the area that summer, most arriving by trains that brought the migrants one way for free to bring more immigrants to Arkansas. A fraction of these immigrants returned to the north after they discovered that the land was not cleared and the houses were not built. The road ahead would be hard and many did not think they could handle it. 85 families remained after this initial wave of settlement. The Polish settlement in Marche didn't happen in a vacuum. In 1870, there were only about 5,000 immigrants in the state, but by 1890, that number had grown to over 14,000. Much like today, Arkansas was not a populous state compared to other states in the Union. There were several societies dedicated to recruiting immigrants to move to Arkansas in the state, and literature was developed to aid in these efforts. In the 1870s, there was even an entire newspaper, The Spirit of Arkansas, devoted to recruiting migrants to the state. In the fall of 1878, Father Anthony Jaworski arrived in Marche. Jaworski was one of many beloved priests to serve the spiritual needs of the community. Upon his arrival, a small wooden chapel named the Immaculate Heart of Mary Church was built high on a hill. The hill was named Jasna Gora, or Sky Blue Mountain, after a famous shrine in Poland. A larger building replaced the original church in 1896 and served the community until it was destroyed by fire in 1932. The interior of that second church is pictured here. On the right bottom is an early 20th century photograph of one of the original families, the Gabansky family, who have donated much of their family photographs as part of the initiative to document Marche's history. The Gabanskys were among the first families in the community. Victor Gabansky was born in Poland, likely around Poznan, but the exact location is unknown. While in Poland, he married Katarina Metelski, and in 1873, they immigrated to the United States. And by 1880, their entire family had arrived in Pulaski County and began farming in the Marche community. The couple had 7 children. In 1893, Katarina unexpectedly died, and Victor married Anila, who was brought over from Poland by a cousin that same year. And Anila and Victor had 6 additional children, making 13 children total. The Gabansky family married into several other Polish families within the Marche community, and their descendants are still in the community today. Similarly, the first page of another early settlers' Polish-English dictionary is pictured on the top left. This dictionary belonged to the Lukasiewicz family. This book belonged to Michael, who was the son of Jan. Jan immigrated with his wife Frances and with Michael when he was just 12 years old. Unlike the Gabanskys, the Lukasiewicz family was likely alerted to the opportunity to move to Marche while still in Poland. They immigrated to the United States in 1878 with the purpose of moving to Marche after hearing word of farmland available in the settlement. On the far right is a photograph of some of the original settlers. Well, it's kind of on the right top, I guess. Some of the original settlers at a picnic in 1906 at Marche Lake. Not everyone in the photograph is identified, but 6th from the right is the second priest at Marche, Father Charles Hurdle. Father Hurdle was a fellow immigrant. He was born in German-occupied Poland in 1878. After immigrating to the US, he became ordained as a priest by the Diocese of Little Rock in 1907. He served the congregation at Marche from 1907 until his death in 1915. Third from the right is Max Malkowski, who operated the grocery store in the community, and the photograph of his grocery store is also on the right. Malkowski was born in Poland in 1874 and immigrated to the United States in 1892. He was originally a barkeep in Little Rock, according to local lore, but settled in Marche in the 1890s. In 1896, he married Frances Lukasiewicz, unrelated to the Lukasiewicz family I just mentioned as far as I can tell. She was born in Arkansas to Polish parents, but I can't find any record of her actual birth. In the same year, Malkowski opened a dry goods store, which along with the train depot made up the actual town site of Marche. The store here is shown in the early 20th century and was not the only store building Malkowski ever operated. When the town was given a post office, he was named postmaster, which was a position he held until they closed the post office in 1930. He died in 1955 and his wife died in 1975. These specific examples of early settlers counter the narrative that all of these Polish residents arrived in Marche together after Count von Schwinski's purchase of the land. After the initial settlement, folks immigrated directly to Marche or moved from other areas of the country and nearby cities for the opportunity to develop farmlands and industry in a Catholic Polish community throughout the late 19th century. Maybe? It's considering it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We've committed too much. Maybe? Okay, cool. After arriving in Marche, many residents worked to stay connected to Poland. There were letters sent from visits to Poznan, and most members of the community continued to speak Polish. But when World War I erupted, Poland was caught in the propaganda campaign. At the outbreak of the war, Poland was partitioned between Germany, Austria, and Russia. If you're familiar with whose side the US was on during the war, it's clear what this meant for Poles living in the States. Similar to the anti-German sentiments of this period in Arkansas, the Polish residents of Marche's loyalty to the United States was held in question. To dispel questions of loyalty, members of the community rallied in support of the United States. Many joined the military. For those that didn't join up, they demonstrated their patriotism on the home front. The souvenir program pictured in the center from a 1918 Polish Independence Day program illustrates the effort made by the local community. Each member of the Polish community in Pulaski County served in the war is listed by name, and there's a statement of loyalty to the United States in the program. This is the earliest document that has been archived that was created by the community for the community in English. This demonstrates a shift toward assimilation to American culture by many of the settlers. When the area was originally settled, it was largely undeveloped. Except for the church and school, no other development is noted in the 1907 Pulaski County Atlas. I'd like you to have this geographic picture in mind for when I shift to speaking about the ways the community was geographically affected over the years. The first change came with the creation of Camp Robinson as an expansion of Camp Pike in the 1940s. During the time between World War I and World War II, the post served as the headquarters of the Arkansas National Guard. Facilities to support the use of the post in this capacity were funded by sales of unneeded materials from the original camp. In addition, a large CCC unit was stationed on the post, and the post hosted the Citizens Military Training Camp each summer. In 1937, Camp Pike was renamed for late U.S. Senator Joseph Taylor Robinson of Arkansas. There we go. In early 1940, the United States reclaimed the post and began construction on a temporary cantonment for the 35th Division, a National Guard division being called to active duty for 1 year of training. Elements of the 35th began arriving as early as January 1941. Called to active duty for 1 year, the 35th was scheduled to be released from active duty on December 23, 1941. When this expansion occurred in 1941, about 40 families in Marche were forced to relocate to North Little Rock, or Little Rock, where government jobs awaited them. When the community was told their land would be leased for this camp expansion, many were unhappy. For the creation of the ordnance works in Jacksonville, the landowners had their land purchased by the government outright. Why wouldn't the citizens of Marche be offered the same? The landowners in Marche were initially offered an annual lease with renewals at a rate that many in the community cited as being too low to be able to afford rent anywhere comparable in the interim. This lease occurred prior to the war, and according to newspaper reports, eventually most residents yielded with the understanding that the expansion would be temporary. It wasn't, and many of the residents had to tolerate the low lease payments because they had no other options until the government finally purchased the land following the war. The land was purchased as the result of a federal court proceeding to provide the landowners in Marche and Cato cash for their land. In 1942, a reporter from the Arkansas Gazette visited Marche to learn more about how the development was going to affect these citizens. Though many of the men had taken work off their land and were not home the day he visited, they were going to build the camp expansion and Mama ordnance works that would eventually displace them. The article does note that they went to camp to find work when they could, and when they couldn't, they farmed. Joe Kachelny, whose descendants still live in the community today, and whose descendant is responsible for over half of the photographs that we've been able to collect from the community, was home that day, though. At the time the article was written, Joe was 55. He is pictured here on the top right. Oh, I'm having struggles with the slides. Sorry about that. He's pictured here on the top right with his wife, Mariana. When he was approached by the reporter, Joe regarded the reporter with suspicion as he attended to the stock in his barn behind the whitewashed home of the family of 8. He told the reporter that he had lived in Marche all his life. The article states Joe wondered aloud, "What is there to do?" He parried irritably, rubbing his forefinger over the thick handlebar mustache which bristled almost to the muffs covered in his ears. "We asked for help. They say we have to move." He shrugged and went on with his work. The bottom photograph features the family farmhouse discussed in the article that was eventually included in what was absorbed by Camp Robinson. The top photograph features the building that was sold to the family from the Rower Relocation Center after it was closed. The family still owns the Rower home today, though many changes have been made to the original structure. I found this especially interesting as a historian, given that all the buildings from Rower were sold off and we don't know where most of them ended up. After their land was acquired, the family had to relocate before being able to acquire the Rower house. And even after, they relied on an outhouse and even makeshift housing and tents to accommodate their large family while their land was being leased. The article notes at the time, Joe was refusing to lease his land, as many in Marche were, but eventually they had to acquiesce or face losing the land without compensation. The federal court case I previously mentioned was brought without knowledge by most of those affected in Marche. just one of the many instances in which their language barriers and cultural differences prevented them from participating fully in their outside community and having agency over their own lives and futures. The priest at the time, Father Hurdle, was also interviewed for the article. He shared concerns about the parish's ability to survive. If many of the families were relocated, but cites the community's undefinable hope that they would continue to thrive even with camp's expansion. Later developments include the creation of the city of Maumelle and the development of Interstate 40, which further cut off areas of the community from one another. The effects of these developments have been long-lasting, but the community has persevered with their undefinable hope and remains a strong presence in the area due to their cultural and religious ties, as well as their familial ties, even with a drastically smaller footprint. As previously mentioned, the Catholic congregation in Marche was founded in 1878. As soon as it was founded, it became a pillar of the community. Unfortunately, wind damage and fire destroyed that second church building we saw photographed on the other slide in 1932. The current church building is a Gothic revival structure built out of brick on a stone foundation. It was designed by the noted Arkansas architect Charles L. Thompson. It was completed in 1932 and dedicated in early 1933. Throughout the church's history, it has tied the community together. When the church was first founded, services were conducted in Polish, and the first two priests who served the community until 1950 were Polish. The prayer book featured here is from the Jędrzejewski family. The descendant who currently has the book cannot read Polish, but remembers her grandparents using the book and knows many of the prayers. The church is pictured here right after it was completed in 1934. As we'll talk about a bit more in a bit, many of the families here lived in relative poverty compared to those living in Argenta and Little Rock during the period. Many of the only photographs that exist are of weddings, confirmations, and school events. The confirmation photos of children serve as a record of those who attended the parish school and how the Polish community changed over time. Additionally, the Benedictine Sisters of St. Scholastica had a great impact on the community. The order was founded in 1878 outside of Fort Smith, around the same time that the community of Marche was founded. As far as they were able, St. Scholastica responded to the mandate of the 1884 Council of Baltimore to staff schools where there was a Catholic church, regardless of the ethnic background of the people there. Requests for teaching sisters were many, and the number of available sisters was too few to meet the demand. But several worked at Marche, including the nun photographed here with her painting, Sister Stanislaus Szczepaniak. Sister Stanislaus was born to Polish immigrants in 1878 in Wyandotte, Michigan. She entered service with St. Scholastica in 1899, though when she arrived in Arkansas is unknown. During her time in the order, she served as an art educator. She was a prolific and talented artist and taught many children at Marche. Her paintings are revered among members of the community, and her work at Marche is remembered fondly. Her parents lived in Marche and are buried at Immaculate Heart of Mary. The cemetery has graves dating back to the 1880s, and the earliest headstones are in Polish. Though the order's numbers wane in the present day, many women from the Marche community committed to the order throughout its history. Primarily, the nuns came to Marche to teach, and as soon as there was a church in Marche, there was a school. Shortly after the foundation of the church, the Holy Ghost Fathers built a school. The original structure was a 2-story log building with 2 classrooms on the ground floor and living quarters for a priest on the second floor. Lay women were the first teachers, and by 1884, there were 83 students. By 1891, the Benedictine sisters were teaching in Marche and formally established a Catholic school through the order known as St. Mary's. In 1924, Blue Hill School was built, teaching students through the 8th grade with 4 Benedictine sisters. In 1927, the Pulaski County School District took control of the school, thereby making it a public school. Community lore says that Father Charles Hurdle would post watch at the end of Blue Hill Road to watch for district personnel so that nuns could teach religion classes at the now public school. In 1947, a report from the convent indicated that 4 sisters were still stationed at Marche, so they clearly still had a presence in the community at the time. The 1927 school building is featured in the 2 center photographs on this slide. In 1953, Blue Hill School withdrew from the district and once again became a parochial school. Under the guidance of Monsignor Thomas Pendergrast, a larger school was built and dedicated in 1960. That building is pictured here. A large fundraising effort was undertaken to construct the school. Many of Marche's residents were still relatively poor during the period, so where they couldn't give monetarily, they gave of their skills and talents. From August to September 1959, parishioners participated in a fund drive for a $100,000 school to be built the following year. Unfortunately, they raised only $25,000, but it was added to an existing $53,000 building fund. The parish notably saved funds by refurbishing items from the original school and using volunteer labor from the community in its construction. In 1962, the parish added an elementary library to the school, which was dedicated in May of that year. In 1991, 3 classrooms and a library were built. As the church continued to grow, the upper building, which includes church offices, 4th through 8th grade classrooms, a cafeteria, and parish life center, was constructed in 1998. In 1990, the parish decided to bring back hosting carnival, or a carnival fundraiser to celebrate the community's Polish heritage. It offers Polish food and games. This was held for a period in the 1950s, but every year since 1990, the parish has organized carnival to fall on the second Friday and Saturday in September, so be sure to keep a lookout for that. It's pretty fun. During COVID-19, the parish even operated a drive-through event to celebrate. It serves as the major fundraiser for the parish school. This is just one of many traditions in Marche. It's hard to talk about Marche without talking about their wonderful wedding traditions. In Marche, weddings are quite a big deal and have been for the community's history. Every person I've interacted with in Marche has shared memories of their experiences at weddings in the community. These affairs are a testament to how of service the members of the community have been to one another over the years. Often dresses would be reworked to save money for the next wedding, decorations reused, and the dance floor pictured in the top left corner was taken apart and refabricated for each wedding in the mid-century. In 1958, the Democrat Sunday magazine devoted a multiple-page spread to document one of these events. The mother of the bride remarked that in the old country, the wedding would have likely been 3 times the size it was that day. The wedding was to be held outdoors because not everyone would fit inside any available indoor space. The wedding was for August or Gus Science and Doris Luliet. In preparation for the wedding, many animals had to be butchered, and the druzhba and starosta had to be appointed, which were 2 men that served as the master of ceremonies. After they were married, it was customary for a couple to drive into town to a photography studio to have a portrait made, like the ones pictured here, before returning to enjoy a large party. The article also noted that 3 musicians on a concertina, bass, and violin played for days as guests danced and enjoyed food and drink. The musicians noted in the article, Pete Bowick, Walter Sparga, and Ben Bargle, were noted musicians in the community. They are seen playing another wedding in the bottom center photograph on the slide. Additionally, John Gabansky was a noted violin player, as well as Warren Carpenter, who played the bass. Gabansky's son still has his violin today. These musicians were a staple at weddings and other local events. Many of them were in multi-generational musical households and taught younger members of the community to play as well. Women of the community were responsible for preparing the food. For the wedding documented in the paper, it was noted that there were nearly 300 dishes on 2 tables with over 50 different foods. One of the exciting wedding traditions practiced in Marche is the plate breaking. The druzhba dances a few steps with the bride, then turns to a table where a man holds a towel. Under the towel is a china plate or a pie pan, or both. The druzhba was to break the plate with his fists by throwing a silver dollar at it, while the man holding the plate tried to prevent it being broken. After he tried to break the plate, he left money at the table as his gift to the bride. His reward was his choice of a cigar or a beer. After the druzhba, the groom and his groomsmen tried, then the bridesmaids, then the guests. All of the unmarried men tried first, then young women, and then old men, meaning any married man. After each attempt, the guests would get an opportunity to dance with the bride while the next person tries to break the plate. The celebration typically lasted for days during that time, and they usually ate and danced through Sunday as well. I loved learning about weddings in the community because as you get to know these folks, you learn that their everyday lives were challenging, and the weddings and other community events served as opportunities for them to find joy in difficult circumstances. The folks in Marche dealt with discrimination, language barriers that lasted for decades for most, and poverty because the farmland never bore what they hoped when they initially settled in Marche. When I last presented this talk and I made that statement, several people came up to me and they wanted me to know there were rich people in Marche, just not most of them. So I do want to clarify, there were rich people in Marche, just not most of them. Many of the residents lived very frugally, raising livestock including cows, pigs, and chickens for food, and farming where they could. They built structures for their farms from scrap from logging projects in the surrounding area and subsisted on what they were able to grow and raise. When World War II industry came to Arkansas, many in the community worked at Camp Robinson or at the Maumelle Ordnance Works, and most abandoned farming after the war as they took jobs in the city. After 1950, most of the children were no longer speaking Polish in school and were often punished by the nuns if they did. So they became more integrated into the surrounding community and sought education and employment opportunities elsewhere as adults. Most of the photographs here show the farms and homes of the Gabansky, Wilk, Gendreus, and Kachalny families. The top right photograph is of the Maumelle Ordnance Works in the 1940s. Many men in the community helped construct the facility for very low wages and worked there after it was completed while it was in operation. The photograph on the bottom right shows the second Malachowski store that was likely constructed in the 1920s, though an exact date is not known. The date was at the top of the structure, but is too faint to make out in either photo we have located of the building. The bottom center photo shows a group of local children on a fishing trip, likely to Marche Lake or Grassy Lake, which was a common destination for the community's children for recreation. Access to both bodies of water was blocked by the development of Camp Robinson and Interstate 40. After World War II, life in Marche changed significantly. Many descendants have moved from the community, but Immaculate Heart of Mary is still a thriving congregation. Today, it serves both the Polish settlers that remain and other folks who now call Marche their home, including members of Central Arkansas Spanish-speaking community. Father Reuben, the current priest at Immaculate Heart of Mary, is Argentinian. Even now, almost 150 years after the church was established, it continues to support an immigrant community in Marche. Prior to my work in Marche, as I mentioned, the community and their traditions were woefully underrepresented in the archival record. I have felt incredibly welcomed by the community since I was first introduced to them. I'm excited to have the opportunity to tell the story of Marche and continue collecting material related to the community's development. This is not the first community archiving initiative at the Butler Center, as Heather mentioned, but it's been my most successful. I feel that I've really been able to build and foster relationships with the members of the community and preserve their story. Many of them are aging and concerned about their family stories being lost. I hope that by archiving this material at the Butler Center, I can help prevent that. Also, by digitizing their material and returning it, I ensure that these stories stay with the families as well. I began my outreach work by setting up a booth at Carnival in 2022. I was able to meet several members of the community there and began the collecting initiative. As you can see in the photo on the left, I didn't have much by way of photographs to tell Marche's story with at that event, and I instead invited members of the community to share their stories with me. That led to me meeting many more folks, and with their help, I was able to create a more robust interpretation of the community's history, which is featured on the right-hand side. This work was supported by the over 800 documents and photographs the Butler Center has been privileged to collect from the community as part of this effort. You may recognize the title from today's talk, Why Mess with a Good Thing? After 2023's Carnival, we have added even more material to the collection, so now the work really begins. I have also been working with a documentary filmmaker, Paulina Sobchak, who is creating a film about Marche that includes personal interviews and footage of the community as well. So as to not reproduce her work, I have not done an oral history initiative as part of this project. I hope that her documentary will add to our understanding of Marche though. This year, I also hope to complete the process of creating archival description for the materials we've collected. And after the description is complete, I'll begin work creating a digital project that highlights many of the collected photographs and documents that will ideally include some mapping features that will make it easier to visualize the geography of the community and how it's changed over time. Thanks so much. Anyone have questions?
Any questions in the audience? Okay, I'm gonna start with you.
Oh,
You do get a mic.
oh, thank you. Well, I just had one of the clarifications. When they built the second church, I think you said architect was Charles Thompson.
Yes.
Make sure I heard you correctly.
Yeah.
Hi, my question is, how many of those World War II soldiers that returned to Arkansas moved to the Marche area, do you know?
I don't know. As far as I know, there aren't a lot of folks like who work on the base who live in Marche. The land that they still have, the families have really tried to keep. So
not specific to those that work on the base.
But
I have family members. The reason I'm asking that I know lived in Marche and it was after he returned home from the war.
Yeah, so specifically the Black community in Marche, there was a historically Black community that also existed in Marche during the same period. And I've talked to you a little bit about this roundup. I've been struggling to find folks to talk to that still live in the community or lived there. So if someone is listening to this on Zoom that knows someone who lives in the historically Black community in Marche, or knows someone who did live there and now lives somewhere else, I would love to speak to them to round out this history a little bit more. And it is possible that many folks did move there after the war, but I'm not familiar with that now.
Oh, you're gonna make me really feel Donahue. No, you have to.
I didn't even notice you were here, which is
thanks, Danielle, for doing this work. So, and I came in a few minutes late. This might have been covered, but I was always under the impression that all of Marche was on the north side of the river in Pulaski County. And then you made a reference to the incorporation of the planned community of Maumelle encroaching on Marche. I also thought all of Maumelle is on the south side of the river and west of North Little Rock. Some of Maumelle incorporated now goes over across the north side of the river.
Yeah, so it's like Highway 365 sort of runs up through the middle of the community, and there was settlement on the left side of Highway 365, and then Maumelle sort of picks up on the other side of that until you run into the river, because the river sort of goes like this up the map. This modern map I think is helpful. Let me see if I can go back. Ooh, maybe. This clicker does not like me today. There we go. So here's Maumelle, the river's down here. Here's Marche, 365, the other side of Marche, there's the church.
And where was Pulaski Robinson, or not Pulaski Robinson, Pulaski Oak Grove School before it moved to Maumelle? Essentially relocated that PCSSD school.
Yeah, so Oak Grove runs into Marche on 365. It's a little bit closer to the intersection with 40. So if you get off 40 and you're like going up 365 to go to Marche, you pass through Oak Grove first. And there were folks from Marche who did attend Oak Grove, and there was like, whenever it was a public school, there was sort of an initiative to like send some students to Blue Hill and some students to Oak Grove. So there's sort of like an amalgamation of that community. Marche is just sort of known more as being the Polish community. And I don't know much about the history of Oak Grove though.
And so one final thing, I assume there are people living in Maumelle now who are descendants of people who lived in Marche.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so there's a lot of folks, especially after World War II, that moved into Maumelle or moved into North Little Rock. And I've met a lot of them because they come back for carnival and things, and a lot of them are still active in the Catholic parish and just don't actually live in Marche anymore.
But if they had the same property that was once in Marche but became part of Maumelle, they would have had to move in, but now they live in Maumelle in spite of having originally been part of Marche.
Yeah, whenever I say that Maumelle's incorporation shrunk Marche, I just mean geographically. So like it's not technically part of Marche anymore because Marche is an unincorporated part of Pulaski County and Maumelle is now an incorporated town. And the Marche folk are very serious about not incorporating, like they're not interested. Right. So they really like being county people. So yeah. So
it's a part of the unincorporated portion of Pulaski County.
It's our service area.
And it's very high, it points out to me. The unincorporated part of the county is the third largest part of the county behind Little Rock and North Little Rock. So there is that.
There you go.
Thank you. Isn't it one of the designated, unincorporated designated census areas? I don't know, that's a thing. I mean, it is a thing, but I can't remember. We had a list at one point.
Okay, I'm not sure. That sounds like a guy question.
That is a guy question.
Census designated place.
Thank you. That's what I'm going for. Census, I always get my words out of order.
I cannot confirm or deny if it is a census designated place or not. I'm not sure.
There is an Encyclopedia of Arkansas entry on Marche.
There is.
So if anybody wants even more information, of course you'll want more information. Okay, we have questions from Zoom real quick. Jim Armstrong says, I live in Marche. And he says, was Marche Lake? That's the first one.
That is a good question. I've been meaning to go. So the documentary filmmaker had the opportunity to go in a car with someone from the community, and he pointed out all of these sites that, were, and some of them are like no longer lakes too, because they're like part of camp or they were absorbed in the 40 construction. So I'm not exactly sure, I guess is my answer. But that as part of the digital project, I'd like to identify some of these landmarks, even if they're not there anymore, just to give folks an idea of what the geography was like. But it will probably take me getting in a car with like a native. Yeah.
Okay.
Of the knowledge.
Jim's next question is, what was the Joe guy's last name in the changing landscape slide? Maybe you just said it.
Joe. Maybe Joe Gabansky, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know who I referenced specifically. But probably if I said Joe, it was the guy who was at home with the Gazette. Oh yes, the guy who was at home. That was for Robinson. That is his last name is Gendreus. Or Kachelny.
Okay.
Joe Kachelny, yeah, Joe Kachelny. That family is intermarried, so I'm like, which last name was it?
Genealogy.
Yeah, it's fun. Especially here where all the cousins married, you know, not first cousins, obviously, but yeah.
So Malin Rice would like to know, was or is there an annual event for the community today, which you covered, and that may have come earlier, but.
It is, Carnival, which it usually happens on the second weekend of September at Immaculate Heart of Mary Church. It is a beautiful site, and they do church tours during Carnival. It's a gorgeous church. If you want to learn more about the church too, Ashley Slides, who is here, did a sandwiching and history tour of it. Was it recorded? Is it on like the
Is it on HTV?
Oh, okay. It's on the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program's Facebook page. You can watch the tour of the church and learn more about the specific church's history and see what the inside of it looks like. But you can also visit, and the cemetery is beautiful, and there's also a walking trail. So cool. There's stuff to do in Marche.
An outing. Let's see. Jim Armstrong has two other questions.
Okay.
How can an individual access the archival material on Marche? That's one.
Yeah. So at this time, the only processed collection is the Gabansky family collection and the Marche community history collection. I'm working to process the archival material. It's time consuming because I'm trying to identify everyone I can while I'm doing it. But those two are digitally available. The digitized content is not available, but the finding aids are available. So you can search in our catalog for either Marche Community History Collection or Gabansky Family Collection, and then you can access it in our research room 9 to 6 Monday through Friday, or 12 to 4 every Saturday, excluding major holidays.
And we will link to those finding aids in the YouTube description. And then I love it when someone asks a new question and then the other question goes away. Not that one. That one's coming. Phoenix, it's coming. When will the doc with oral history come out?
I don't know. I've actually been in contact with Paulina within the last month because I thought someone might ask that at this presentation. She said she's hoping sometime this fall. It was vague. So it's a pet project of hers. It's not, something she's being paid for. So it's taking her some time. And she's back in Poland now, where she's from, and lives there again now. So
and I think we could probably have a viewing of said documentary.
Yeah, I've talked to our head of adult programming about doing such a thing at the point that it is available. So we will hopefully post a viewing when it is available.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now for Phoenix's question. What is your favorite piece of Marche history that you've discovered?
Oh, definitely the 1874 map. I just it really tied it all together for me, just to visualize I will go back to that slide, but the clicker does hate me. So to really visualize what they saw as the land available to them, and what they were sold as their opportunity to come to Arkansas. I think that, and then just really getting to know the people in the community and seeing everything that they have gone through and how hard they have worked to stay connected to their culture and each other, I think is incredibly beautiful. So.
Yeah, I think many of us in the room, when you said something about this is a really good day, when you found that map, we all knew that feeling.
Mm-hmm. If you're a history
yes,
anyhow.
Yeah, you know that. Okay, so Tim Nutt says he has a comment. Warren Station was part of larger St. Joseph Colony, where different immigrant groups were to be relocated. Warren Station was Polish. Conway was German, Morrilton was French and German, and Adkins was German.
Oh.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I'd like to learn more about that, Tim. Thanks.
Yeah. Call us, Tim.
I do know that the only thing that was there when they arrived was, in fact, the station. They're here's this, many of them slept in the station until they could get structures built from logging projects. So, yeah.
Any other questions from folks in the room? Well, thank you so much, as always, for helping me out on July 3rd.
Yeah. Thank you for spending your time.
How am I not making feedback happen? That's shocking. Okay. A couple of closing remarks, announcements, things you really need to know. July 12th. So I know tomorrow's a big holiday, but July 12th, mark your calendars. That is Second Friday Art Night. And we are now located in the Rocket Lab, formerly known as the Cox Building. Some people talk about the triangular building that way. There is parking. You have to access it from 2nd Street, but you can still park there. We're going to have art from local artists, live music. You can come knit with me if you would like. So lots of fun activities July 12th. And then it is summer at Cal's. And I say that kind of calmly because there's several people in the room that would go, it is summer at Cal's. So it is summer at Cal's. Please go by your local branch, sign up, participate. Because you're an adult, you still can participate. This isn't a kids only event. And the Roberts Library is participating this year by doing, Danielle created and Becca, a riverfront history hunt, and it's a scavenger hunt, just kind of in this general River Market area. You go to 5 landmarks, and so you can pick it up at a branch, you can pick it up at Roberts Library. They do have to come back to Roberts to get their button, right?
It's also in the building, so that makes
yes.
it pretty easy.
So you get a button, and I mean,
give away the prize.
Yeah. Oh, was I not supposed to give away the prize? Oh, sorry. We'll edit that out, right, Nathan?
No, we won't. It's
Nathan's like, I'm not listening to you, Heather. So you'll get a prize when you bring your thing, not what I said earlier. Okay, so finally, I promise, and then I'll return the mic. Next month, we're going to be joined by Rachel Trusty from Bucknell, listen to my accent come out. Bucknell University out of Pennsylvania, and she is going to talk about the first queer marriage in Arkansas in 1888. I had to double check and make sure that I was really typing that correctly. So please mark your calendars for Wednesday, August 7th at noon, back here at UA Little Rock downtown. Thank you everybody for being here. Get a cookie if there are any left as you leave.
On Family Facts.
Well, you go forever on program announcements. So Finding Family Facts is the 2nd Monday of the month, which will be July 8th. And then Personal Archiving is the 4th Monday of the month, which will be July 20-something. Look at the 4th Monday of the month on the calendar. So 22nd is what I'm hearing from the back of the room. So, okay, thanks everybody.